Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Many people start their selling careers by accident, believing it to be a way to make a little money until they get a real job, only to find out that it's an exciting and rewarding profession. Once you have determined to dedicate your life to selling, you'll find out that it's also complex and challenging. That's when the real learning begins. If you have discovered that you don't know everything about selling, join Scott and I as we answer questions from our listeners on episode 520 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
So we're going to be wrapping up the book today, Success Principles by Jack Canfield, Principles 60 through 62. But before we start, let's hear from our sponsor, BusyWeb, a growth marketing and sales enablement agency.
This is Dave Meyer with BusyWeb, a proud supporter of the Winning at Selling podcast. BusyWeb is a growth marketing and sales enablement agency in Minneapolis. Each week, I'm bringing you buzz tips customized for sales pros to help you land more deals. If you need help driving leads to your biz, check us out at busyweb.com. That's BIZZYWEB.com. This week's tip, try video email to get more opens. Email is the workhorse of selling, but it can be tough to stand out and get a response from your contacts. Here's a power seller tip. Use custom video in your emails to get better results. The first trick is to customize every video for each prospect. I like using a small whiteboard and writing their name on it. Next, make sure you keep it short, sweet, and to the point. 45 seconds is about perfect. Share a helpful tip and ask them to connect with you. Finally, include a clear, obvious call to action for a next step. One button tied to a beneficial link or page. Tools like Vidyard or even YouTube can make this super easy. Click the sponsor icon at winningatselling.com for details on email selling, or go to busyweb.com, that's BIZZYWEB, for tools to start engaging your prospective buyers. Or give us a call at 612-4BUSY-O, that's 612-424-9990.
So, Bill, this has been a great book. I just tell you, there's so many things that I've forgotten that I reminded of, and so many things that I needed to know based on the relevance in the marketplace and the questions that I had. I found a lot of answers in this book, and I'm so grateful that our listeners continue to download our episodes, continue to share our episodes, and our downloads continue to increase. What did you think of the book overall?
Well, first of all, I found him, it's a big book. A lot of chapters, can be kind of daunting to you. I found him to be a good writer, engaging and easy to read, kind of breezy, not as breezy as maybe a Carnegie or as a John Maxwell, but breezy enough that I could get through the chapters fairly quickly. And they were very pertinent. This will be a book that's on my annual list of books that I have to read. And I really have to work at going back through this and finding a few things to actually engage upon. Now, some of the things I do already, which is good, because we don't want to look at a book like this and go, wow, I'm totally backwards. I'm totally upside down. I don't do any of these things. Most of us do some of these things fairly well, and that's good. That's where we kind of have built our success. But we need to grow, and I would advise you to go back through this book and find a few things that you want to do. And we're going to wrap this up. We're not going to get through the very tail end of this. We have a guest next week, and we want to start a new book. So it'll either be the last section we're going to do in this book.
Yeah. And I've reached out to Jack Canfield's office. I've engaged with the marketing person. I filled out the questionnaire. I did all that, and it's on their radar. So we may surprise our listeners by interviewing Jack Canfield in future months. So stay tuned for more. All right, let's get on with the book. Chapter 60 is to spend more, first make more. He talks about you can either cut your expenses and become more profitable, or you can work on making more money. And of course, Jack picks make more money. And I always think about working with some business owners when I get invited in about increasing the profitability. And sometimes they have the mentality of cutting expenses will not increase revenue.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It will increase profitability for a short period of time, but always investing in a business is always going to create a greater return if you're making the right decisions. And I think sales training is probably one of the most important investments to make, and developing the salespeople, because you have to convert conversations into income. And one of the lines out of this book is, wherever you decide to put your energy, the key is to become more valuable to your employer, your customers and your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times have we come in contact with a salesperson where we're encouraging them to listen to a podcast or read a book, and they go, well, I really don't do that. I mean, I like to game, I like to do the gaming things, and if I can read the book on company time, I'll do that. And it's like, no, you have to provide more value to your current employer, and this is investing in yourself. So spending more time and energy on yourself to develop yourself to be able to give a greater return to your employer.
I think there is a value to cutting stupid expenses.
Of course.
And any company, any individual, we talked about this a little bit last week, stop spending money on nonsense. Companies spend money on nonsense too, and they don't always watch the pennies because someone else is paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not careful about which airline they pick or what hotel they choose or finding a discount somewhere. I think those are all important things that can help us, but we have to be careful that we don't get a bankrupt attitude where we save a penny and lose $1.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing we have to be careful of. But looking for ways to make ourselves more valuable is really the key, whether we're a company or whether we're an individual. I'm working on a program for leaders, a leadership program, because a company that I work with has 33% of their leaders going to be retiring in the next 5 years, and they have nobody ready really in the wings. It's because they haven't really actively gone out and searched for it, but also those managers haven't really done the job they need to do to get their replacement ready. So that's what the whole thing's about, is building bench strength. So are you the bench strength for your organization? You're not going to be the bench strength if you just do what you're expected to do. You'll only become the next person in line because you've gone out and you found out more about the business, you found out more about the industry, you've learned more about how to be better at yourself. All those things Scott talked about. So increase your own value, books, audios, videos, figure it out and learn more.
Yeah, he gives 3 steps, very simple steps. Number 1, act in the present. So the visualization, this is a reinforcement from past chapters, the visualization. And I agree with that. I think once you visualize it, it becomes real, it becomes present, it becomes something that you can achieve because, first of all, you can conceive it. The second is a question, what product, service, or additional value can I deliver to generate money? So look for opportunities in the marketplace. What's missing? And if you've ever bought a car and you go, oh, I thought about adding that to a feature within a car, another cup holder or another something to make a car, it's like you got that creative mind, you got that idea. So find ways that you can provide services to generate money. And then lastly is to execute on the plan. Very simple, easy to remember, and easy to apply in other areas.
Most people fall down on number 3, execute on the plan. They have a good idea and they never can pull the trigger. They can never get around to it. They never find the time. You've got to carve out the time. You've got to make the time. If you have a good idea, do something with it. It will probably fail and you will learn something through that failure. And that's the challenge for people. They're so afraid to make a mistake. And this is, I'm going to go off on my rant on the school system. We spend 12 to 18 years of our life not getting bad grades, not failing. And because failure is in the school system is bad, failure in business is good if you learn from it. Yeah. So quit working like you're in school and you have a permanent record. Start working like you're in business. Have some failures, make some mistakes, learn from them, and continue to go out and make things happen.
Yeah. Great advice, Bill. Number 61, give more to get more. This is what a great approach to give more and get more. And I think about the corporate compassion and the feeling that leadership has within a corporate that donates and contributes and supports their employees on spending 2 days a year going out and working at Habitat for Humanity, right. Or volunteering at an association or a church group, and the generosity is the prosperity that is reciprocated. Mm-hmm. So when you think about the giving that you give, it's what you get back in return. I've volunteered with the Knights of Columbus on a few projects, and it's just amazing to be a witness of humanity these days.
I think the thing you get out of it, first of all, you get some camaraderie with other like-minded people doing something that's not just your job, but you also learn, I think, sometimes how good you have it. Yeah. Sometimes we forget that we're living the good life compared to many, many thousands of other people, even in our own community. And when we go out and help somebody who needs a home repaired or needs they're elderly and they need somebody just to rake their yard, all those things can put us into that mindset of compassion and generosity, which are important mindsets to have to make the world better. Don't be so selfish with your time and your efforts, and you will get more. Even if it's just emotionally, you'll get more out of it than you give.
Mm-hmm. I think this wraps in perfectly to number 62 is find a way to serve. And you and I have both served as presidents of the Professional Sales Association of Minnesota. And it's been a glorious opportunity for me to deliver a service to committed salespeople that want to develop their skills. And you've done it longer than I have, Bill, and you're the current president of PSA. And it's just so rewarding to see somebody come into a meeting to really embrace the topic and then to come back at another one. So that's because of your leadership of marketing the organization and picking great speakers to come in.
Yeah, I think I've learned the most in having to lead an organization through this COVID issue.
Yeah.
If we're not leading something, we're not learning. And I've made, again, as we talked earlier, I've made many mistakes, but those mistakes have then helped me to make better decisions in the future. So if you led somebody through COVID, if you're helping people get through this and now we're coming out the other side, business is different. That's some of the things our guests, I hope, will talk about. It's very important to lead through difficult times. You learn a lot.
Yeah, there's a great story at the end of this chapter about a guy who wanted to just make a lot of money. And he said it went through 4 different stages. And at first was to get more stuff. I just need more stuff. And then it evolved to better stuff. I want to get better stuff. And then the third was I want to get different stuff. And I've seen this in some people that they end up coming into great financial success and they want more stuff, better stuff, and then different stuff. And it might be you want to collect, different types of horses, or you want to build an antique aircraft collection, and that's different stuff. And then what found out that, joy did not arrive in this pursuit of stuff. And then it became funding a program to create wheelchairs for people that needed it in Africa. And that's where the most joy and personal fulfillment was experienced his entire life, was finding out the right stuff. And they never said right stuff, so I put it in there.
Do we have to do that, Scott? Maybe we have to go through those phases where we collect stuff until we find out we got too much stuff. And then we're like, oh, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I just don't need it. I just don't want it, and I just don't have that much room for it, and every piece of stuff you get has to be maintained.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, this has been a very good book. I've really enjoyed it. A couple more chapters left. As we said earlier, we're not going to touch on those, but we are going to get ready for our next book. So I want to announce our next book, give you a couple of weeks to buy it. It's called How Clients Buy by Tom McMacken and Doug Fletcher. How Clients Buy, a practical guide to business development for consulting and professional services. So we know that a lot of our clients are not selling widgets. They're out selling professional services. They're consulting. So how do we sell the invisible? So grab that book, How Clients Buy by Tom McMacken and Doug Fletcher. We'll have that in the show notes. So our major topic for today is we love to deal with questions from our listeners from time to time. Before we get into that, let's listen to a message from A.J. Imholt, a financial advisor dedicated to salespeople.
As a salesperson, you have enough to deal with. Prospects hang up on you, clients skip meetings, slow responses to your emails. It's enough to drive you bonkers. Fortunately, you can take control of your financial future. Your time is at a premium, and you want to focus on finding new clients and growing the customers you already have. So it's best to work with someone who takes the time to build an understanding of what you have on your plate. I'm AJ Imholt of Fortune Financial, and this is where I come in. As a financial advisor dedicated to salespeople, my goal is to help manage your portfolio so you can focus on what matters. Then, I'll take care of the boring details while you go out and crush your numbers. You can schedule a time to chat with me using the bookings link in the show notes. Good luck out there, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
A.J. Imholt is a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Security and Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Security and Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Fortune Financial is affiliated with North Star Resource Group and is independently owned and operated.
As I mentioned before, we really enjoy getting questions from our listeners. They're challenging, boy, and they're interesting. So we encourage you to go to winningitselling.com, and there's a form there that you can send questions to us. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, message us there. So let's get started on these questions, Scott.
I'm ready.
These are boogers. These are hard.
Well, they're relevant, which is really nice from our listeners, is that they're giving us relevant questions in today's marketplace, and I love it. So I'm so grateful. Send in your questions, and let's play Stump the Chump. If I can use that as a registered trademark, I got to give credit to whoever has it. So I don't want to. It's not mine.
Scott is the chump. I'm not.
I am. Okay. Bring it on.
All right. Harry from St. Cloud, Minnesota sent this one. I've heard you say that we should avoid discounting, but a lot of my customers get pretty strong about lower pricing. How can I get these sales and keep from dropping my price? First of all, a couple of points about discounting. And this comes from my own ability. I love to negotiate. Scott hates negotiations.
I like negotiations. It's misinterpreted.
He thinks you should just, say no all the time.
No, you tricked me on that one. That's not true.
But number one, the first thing is the easiest thing to ask for you to do is to lower your price. And I will always ask, even if I'm willing to pay the price, first thing I'll ask for is discounts. Because if I can get what I want at a lower price, I'm happy. So don't assume that they won't buy because you don't lower the price. The second thing you have to understand is, do they value what you have to offer? If they do, chances are they're going to pay that price. But most salespeople don't take the time to really understand what the customer wants, what they value, and what they're willing to pay for. And so when it comes to pricing, they think, okay, if I lower my price, I'll get the deal. Maybe you will, but you may have gotten the deal without lowering your price. So those are a couple of the things I start with. Do you know your value? And the easiest thing to negotiate on is price. And that's the first thing that's thrown out there. What do you think, Scott?
Depending on the sales process that you go through, how much emphasis are you really putting on the problem and the impact of the problem and the cost, consequences, and risk of inaction? And really working on identifying the value that somebody would receive, because the price is defined by the absence of value. How much is somebody willing to pay to fill that void? And we need to be able to spend enough time on the interview step to find out what kind of solution they're looking for, and then what they would get when they get the solution implemented. And then I think that's when value is going to be determined. But people can get a little nervous right now with the economy and the uncertainty and it not being predictable. And price is the easiest thing to talk about. And be prepared for it, so that when you get into a situation like that, you've got a response and you've got some questions to be able to uncover what is the true value.
Chances are in this economy, you're going to be going out talking about price hikes with your current customers.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to have to figure out a way to sell that. I do a whole class on how to sell a price increase to your customers. And most of it is dependent on how much they value you.
Right.
So if you don't know what they want, as Scott said, if you don't know what the real gap is and what the challenges they face are, you'll never get to it. And what I found from many of the people that I've advised and worked with, they don't even have more than 3 questions to ask their customers. So they can't drive to that value question, because all they stop at is need. Mm-hmm. You need what I have? Okay, great.
Wow. Yeah. And that's somewhat assumptive too, because the salesperson hasn't really questioned the prospect to really uncover the consequences of not solving the problem.
That's right. Excellent. All right, Scott, what's your first question?
Yeah. Next one, I got Julie from Des Moines, Iowa, wants to know, and the interesting on this question is the perspective that Julie is taking. So I really want to talk about the description of the problem, because sometimes, as Covey said, how we see the problem is maybe part of the problem. So here's the question. Maybe I'm not aggressive enough, but I can't seem to close some important deals. I know this is a pretty broad question, but I could use some ideas. And it's interesting that the word aggressive is used here, because sometimes salespeople can perceive themselves as being aggressive when we should be committed to being assertive. And those are two different words. They're spelled differently too, but they have two different meanings, because salespeople should be assertive without being aggressive. Aggressive is being kind of pointless on your intent, versus assertive is being intentional within your actions and being consistent in that, where you're working on creating that value. Like Bill talked earlier about, we're selling services, and you think about the value that somebody puts a price on when we're selling a service is we're selling a promise. So what are the confidence the prospect has in the bearer of a promise, a salesperson? And every deal is important if it's a qualified fit. So if you're working with a qualified fit, you should be assertive, because you can provide a solution that's going to be interpreted as value by asking the right questions in the right scenarios. And the consequences, if they don't do something, that's a perfect fit. And then you're going to be able to find that your closing ratio is going to increase. When you're assertive, you're consistent, you've got a target market, you provide a relevant solution and deliver the best value. I think that's going to be coming a little bit clearer, Bill. But where am I off on that one, Bill? Or is there anything there that I've missed?
Maybe it's not even either assertiveness or aggressiveness. It's maybe too passive, meaning I don't ask questions. I assume too many things, and I need to be challenging. I need to challenge their assumptions. I need to challenge their current processes. I need to be willing to use my expertise to show them that they're not going to get where they want to go doing what they currently do. So I'm just getting ready to start a consulting program where a company wants to double their sales in 5 years. And the first thing I'm going to tell them is, you won't be able to do that doing what you already do. You're going to need to do some things differently. And that's what I would tell Julie from Des Moines. It's not necessarily aggressiveness, but you need to do some things differently to have the expertise so that you can go in there and be, as Scott said, more assertive. I think the other thing is passivity. If we feel we're being too aggressive or assertive, we maybe don't make the phone calls back. We hope they'll call us. They're not going to call us. You need to be committed to the process and know what your steps are. And you are driving the steps of the sales process. Often customers don't want to make a decision, and that's what we need to help them do. And sometimes they just let the decision sit on their desk for too long. Our job is to continue to touch base with them, to answer their questions, to deal with their issues so that they can make that decision. And sometimes we have to push them a little bit to make that decision.
Yeah, that's great advice. Another perspective, Bill. So I didn't see that one coming in that direction, but you're absolutely right.
All right. My second one, I have Michelle from San Bernardino, California. San Bernardino, California. And she asks, sometimes I have a sale that is moving along nicely. Then suddenly the prospect ghosts me. Did I do something wrong? And how can I get the sale moving again? Well, we've often been ghosted for thousands of years as salespeople. We just didn't have the term ghosting until recently. But they go silent. They stop responding to us. I think that goes a little bit to the last answer that I had, Scott. People are afraid to make a decision, and they don't recognize that by not making a decision, they've actually made a decision. There's not a lot you can do if they're not going to respond to you. But I would say, did you set up the process earlier in your sales conversations to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's the steps we're going to go through. And are we willing to work together to go through those steps? And even in your last call, did you set up a time to call, or did you say, I'll touch base with you sometime in the next couple of weeks? Right. One thing that I tell my clients at the end of a meeting, I'll say, hey, Scott, you know what? The only way that I get things done is on a schedule. I know that's kind of a weakness of mine. And so why don't we set up our next appointment to get together, and then I'll get everything done before that appointment. And they always go, oh, yeah, that's the same for me too. And so while we're there, they'll set that next appointment, and it's not a vague phone call sometime in the future. It's a solid appointment. And now I'm going to go back and see that client maybe next Tuesday. I get my work done. I get the responses that I promised. And now I'm back in their office. And I'll tell you, they're less likely to ghost you or to send you a cancellation to a meeting that you already have set up. So make those steps more concrete and not so vague. What say you?
Yeah. I that's a great perspective. I totally agree with everything that you said. In addition to that, I would also add, did you talk about what other options they're considering? So maybe there was an incumbent that was already in there and they just decided to go with the incumbent and they never told you. Like you mentioned earlier, people don't like to say no. Well, prospects don't like to say no. So they always have an option. As long as they never say no to a salesperson, they always have an option of buying. And salespeople need to be able to qualify that to a yes or no decision, going, is this something that you intend on working with us on? Or have you found something other option, whatever that is? And say, I want to be able to concentrate on people that want to work with us. And if you've made a decision not to accept our proposal, I'm curious as to what made you decide not to pick us, or what did we not deliver that you wanted? What was kind of the process and the criteria there? But also, we're going to be moving on to somebody else. And once you start pressuring a prospect to give something up, this is where they start really getting nervous. And they really start analyzing everything that you talked about, all the value that you deliver. And then they got to say no to the value of the benefits and the services and the outcome of your solution. They got to say no to that. How many people want to say no to something that's going to bring them a better life? They hate giving that up, which is why they don't ever tell you no. So they string you along, they ghost you, and they just keeping you thinking, give you these think about it, think about it, think it over stuff. And it's just very frustrating.
Yeah, good point. The question I asked is similar to that is, Scott, it sounds like you want to tell me no.
Right.
And if they've ghosted me, maybe that's in a text, maybe that's in something else, but you let them know you're moving on. Because you need the mind space to get to that next customer, and quit allowing them to take up mind space that they don't deserve anymore.
How about we do one more? I got one, Evan from Virginia Beach, Virginia. It's been a lot of work for me to get new business. The cold calling takes up a lot of time, as do appointments. But I'm also tasked with servicing customers that I already have, which cuts my week in half as well, or even more. Is there something I can do to get everything done? And obviously, this is a blended role with a salesperson and an account manager. And we need to be able to allocate our time as to what is our goal, what is a perfect week, on how much time do we want to project or schedule in the sales rep getting new business, and how much time do we want to put into account management and retaining the accounts that we have. And we need to be able to do both. Now, Monday morning, we need to figure out what percentage of time that we're going to be doing that. By Friday evening, before we go home for the weekend, we need to look at how much time did we spend. So what's the plan? And then what is the real result of that, and to be able to adjust accordingly. Our goal is to be concentrating on generating new business and keeping the business that we have. But if we're losing business after we're getting it, that's not going to work either. So always ask yourself, how am I going to lose the business? And how can I make sure that I retain all the customers and deliver on the expectations that they have from me? And then I can work on getting new accounts too. So it's a blended role. You got to really allocate time accordingly. Bill, what do you think?
Oh, I think that's a terrific answer to that question. Like a river that flows downhill, most people take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And when I have both service and sales, I'm going to spend more time on service, because it's easier to go talk to people who know me and like me than it is to go talk to people who don't know me and I have to be challenged to have this conversation. I'm always concerned with this dual role because my experience tells me it's two different personalities.
I agree.
That the service personality is different from the sales personality. And if I have a service personality, I'm going to fall down on sales. If I have a sales personality, I'm going to be frustrated having to do the service aspect because I want to go out there and I want to make new sales. And usually I'm paid better for new sales than I am for just servicing old customers. If I'm not paid differently, I'm going to just service old customers.
Right.
And it can always be validated. It's always valuable to service customers, right? You can never have your boss, your sales manager, never going to say, well, Larry, you've been servicing your customers. Oh, you don't want me to service my customers? Well, that's not what I said. I want you to sell something. Well, I have all the, so it's, you're putting your professional salesperson in a lot of conflict by doing that, or truthfully, you may not have enough professional salespeople. You have too many service people, and they're good at getting the deals that are dropped in their lap, but they're not good at going out and aggressively creating enough business. So it's a tough question, and I think Evan has to determine who he is. But if I have to do both, you have to follow Scott's advice. You have to plan your week and commit that 20 hours or 30 hours or whatever that time is to the thing you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
If it's selling, then you're going to have to fight to commit that 10 or 20 hours or 30 hours to selling. If it's servicing, you're going to have to fight to commit that time to servicing. Either way, you're going to have to plan your week out much more specifically and not just try to get your selling done in between.
Yeah.
So Scott's advice is very valuable.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. It's just reactive and proactive. And, it's easier to feel like you need to be defensive when you lose a customer, because your boss can say, why did we lose that customer? Versus a boss coming down on you going, how come we didn't make that sale? I mean, it's like you can't lose something you don't have. So you spend more time on keeping what you have.
That's right. That's right.
And that's normal human nature. We just need to be conscious of it. And how is our performance being rewarded too? And that's a leadership conversation. And that's why we're so grateful to have leaders listening to the podcast on how they can lead a sales team.
Anyway, it's been fun answering these questions. If you want your question answered, go to our winningatselling.com, to our show page. You can connect with us there, or we're welcome. We do welcome people to connect with us on LinkedIn. So let's wrap it up with our golden nugget here, Scott.
I'd like to share a resource before we do that.
Okay.
I did an interview yesterday with Julie Keys. Her podcast is called Poised for Exit. I'll put a link in the show notes. It was a great conversation. Julie works with companies that once you get into business, how do you get out of business? How do you exit the business and move on? And how do you create a system and a culture to be very productive? And sales, I believe, is the most important one. I'm biased. I know there's other ones, but we had a great discussion, so I'll include a link with that. Our golden nugget is a quote out of the book, and it is, "For it is in the giving that we receive," by St. Francis Assisi.
That's a great prayer, by the way, if your prayers.
Yeah.
It's all about gratitude. But yes, it is in giving that we receive, and it's in pardoning that we are pardoned.
Yeah,
and
amen.
So how do we deal with other people? By reaching out, not grasping things, I think, but by giving freely, we're going to find out that we make a lot more friends and we make a lot more good clients.
Right.
All the information that we've talked about today can be linked at winningatselling.com. That's our show page. All the information, all the links can be found there.
Next week, we're going to have a guest, Reed Holden. The book that he's going to be talking about is Negotiating with a Backbone. So feel free to share this episode with people that you work with and share it on social media.
Yeah, we really want to get our downloads over 12,000 per month. And we had a good month last month, Scott, 11,500. So,
right. It's
so
picked up.
That's right. So if you find this podcast helpful, share it with your friends and colleagues, and go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.